Hey friends, Dean here with some exciting news to share. You can now buy us a coffee. That's right. You can help support independent content creators like us by becoming a member of the 3324 Green Room at buymeacoffee.com/3324. Our episodes will always be free and that will not change, but your support at buymeacoffee.com/3324 will help us continue to bring you the best in music and movie podcasting, in our humble opinion. As a Green Room supporter, you'll not only have our undying gratitude, but you'll also be able to vote on which episodes we record and receive other perks for as low as $3 per month. That's the price of a cup of coffee. There's absolutely no obligation, and nothing about the show will change. It's not going behind a paywall. Go to buymeacoffee.com/3324 for all the details. The link will be in the show notes of every episode as well. We'll see you in the Green Room. Musical prodigy Stevie Wonder was firing on all creative cylinders in the 70s with a stack of hits, even more Grammy Awards. Join us as we journey through Stevie Wonder's Innervisions. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast, home of the can koozie. Right here, if you're watching us on YouTube, yeah, we've got branded stuff. This is actually a bottle koozie in this case. And I have all the labels concealed, so we don't get in trouble. You can figure out what may or may not be in this container.
Okay.
But for those listening, it is in a brown glass bottle. So you go from there.
Boy, that could be anything.
Soda does not come in brown bottles.
No.
We'll leave it there. Right? That's as far as it goes. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you for this episode. Hopefully you're going to have a good time. Plenty of other stuff that you could check out, and new stuff always in the future. We're not only looking backwards, but we're a forward-looking podcast as well. We've got one foot firmly in the past with all the stuff we've done, Eric, right?
Uh-huh.
There's always more stuff that's going to be coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just plenty to talk about. That's
yeah. I'm surprised we haven't gotten to this gentleman earlier. I'm like, I almost smacked myself in the face and started punching myself like Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead. What the hell's the matter with you? Happy that we're getting that. Go ahead and if on your favorite podcast provider, just go ahead and follow us if you're new to it. This way you'll get a notification each time that new episode drops. You don't have to worry about it. It'll be there, notified for you. And then when you're ready for it, you go ahead and listen to it. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Same thing. You'll get a notification when either the video version drops or the audio version. Both of those are on YouTube, depending on if I upload the video, but the audio is definitely there as well. So you can check that out and have at it. So we're covering all the bases. And then on social media, hit us up on Instagram and Facebook. We've got a great, vibrant community there too. We respond to comments, questions, and we love to interact and engage. That's all the technical stuff. Now we're going to talk about music. But first, we need to introduce our guest, Mr. Christopher Clark.
Hey. Wow! Now
you couldn't wait to show off those.
Out the big bucks with the applause.
There you go.
Well, now you have earned the audience upgrade. So now you get the applause. You have been on enough episodes that you have reached the audience applause tier.
I feel very privileged to get the audience applause tier.
Yes, but I got to be honest to you. I got to be honest before you say anything. If you're on an episode that jumps the shark, I've got the tomatoes button of throwing the tomatoes.
Well, I would deserve that.
kind of like the Penguin in Batman Returns. Who brings tomatoes and lettuce to a campaign speech?
I don't know. I think it's safe to say none of our guests have ever jumped a shark on this show.
No.
I mean, maybe we have.
I don't think so.
But
I think we've popped the guppy, but we've never jumped the shark.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Christopher Clark, thank you as always for joining in on us. We always appreciate it.
And thank you as always for having me. I love coming on. So
yeah, and we love having you. It's always a great time. And like I said, Eric and I have known each other for forever and a day. So there's not too much that we almost have of the hive mind. If you're going to go, if you want to go to the Star Trek reference there, but so having Christopher Clark and our other great guests with us always adds that little that random element. Mm-hmm. Good news is we've got 3 lies and a truth, Stevie Wonder version later on. So we'll have that. I've worked very hard on coming up with it. Another person whose truths are just as amazing as any lies, but I went with the 3 lies and the truth. So you guys have to figure that out. Now let's jump into it. Let's get into this. The what we're here for. We'll do our stats like we always do. If you're new to the show, here comes some just factual information before we get to the fun stuff. This was released. Innervisions is the album, released in August of 1973, produced by Stevie Wonder, with some associate producers, Robert Margouleff and Malcolm Cecil. I'm sure Stevie Wonder did all the heavy lifting as far as sound and all that kind of stuff. All songs written by Stevie Wonder. There were 4 singles released from this album. Higher Ground hit number 4. Living for the City hit number 8. Don't You Worry About a Thing hit number 16. And He's Mr. Know-It-All actually didn't really chart here, but it was number 10 in the UK. Mm-hmm. This album hit number 4 on Billboard. I was hard to find sales totals for this, but I think I've got it's $714,000, 714,000 at the time. I think. You have something different, Chris?
What I noticed is I looked for that today too. Like I was just kind of like running the stats and doing some Googling. I don't know that it was ever certified gold, which I found really surprising. And like, if you look, the first album that he ever recorded that actually had any kind of sales certification is Songs in the Key of Life, which I find really hard to believe because this record's a part of that golden period. You got like Talking Book, Music of My Mind. It like the fact that he doesn't really get a certification until 76 is really quite shocking, honestly.
Yeah. Well, there might be a little technicality in there too, because they didn't actually start certifying stuff until like the mid to late 70s. And then they had to go back and kind of grandfather that stuff in. I believe there's a story with Styx or something like that, where they were the first band to get a past certification. I could be wrong. I'll have to research that. That's just somewhere in the dustbin of my mind.
Right.
But still, you would think that this album would have gotten something. What I saw was 714,000. So we'll go with it. If you've got other information, let us know. It did win 2 Grammys. It won for Living for the City for Best R&B Song, and it won Album of the Year. And Stevie Wonder's a 1989 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee. So he's definitely a national treasure. Just a little behind the scenes about Stevie Wonder. He was born 6 weeks premature. He was born with sight, but there were some issues because he was put in an incubator because he was born early. Incubators are a very oxygen-rich environment, which led to having the retina issue that he had, which led to his blindness. So he actually was born premature, but then as a result of caring for him, he ended up going blind. And on this album, there's 9 songs. He plays almost every instrument on 7 of the 9. Pretty much, he can't play guitar. I think I've figured out like he doesn't play guitar or can't play very well or doesn't want to because he plays everything else. Never, if there's a guitar needed, he grabs a guitar player. But drums, bass, all the synthesizers, all that great stuff. So
and bass, I think, was like a synthesizer bass, though. Like if I was reading the instruments correctly, so it wasn't necessarily like a bass guitar,
a traditional 4-string bass. I want to roll off some stuff for you guys. I want to roll off some album titles. Because this did win the Grammy for Album of the Year, right? So I'm going to roll off some album titles from 1973, and let's just so I think also the listeners can kind of really see, how special of an artist Stevie Wonder is, and what he was up against also at the time. I think that's important. Like, 73, maybe it was a light year for music, and whatever. Let me roll off some titles. Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. Houses of the Holy, Led Zeppelin. Aladdin Sane, David Bowie. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Elton John. Quadrophenia from The Who. Band on the Run from Wings. Selling England by the Pound from Genesis. Lynyrd Skynyrd's debut album. Goat's Head Soup by the Rolling Stones. Countdown to Ecstasy by Steely Dan. Billion Dollar Babies by Alice Cooper. Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. The Wild, the Innocent, the E Street Shuffle by Bruce Springsteen's debut album, and his second album came out the same year there. Living in the Material World by George Harrison. Mind Games by John Lennon. Brothers and Sisters by the Allman Brothers. I mean, Eric,
pretty heavy year.
he's swinging, and you know, like I said, this was not a light year, musically, right?
No, not at all.
It's generally considered to be one of like the most prolific years in the history of rock and roll, and if not pop music in general.
Yeah. I mean, Eric, that's all. I mean, though you have across the board from progressive rock, some psychedelic, you know, the stuff that Bowie was doing, and then just kind of classic rock like McCartney, right? I mean, he's right. 73 was something.
Yeah. I mean, you got 3 solo Beatle albums in that same year. Pink Floyd, arguably still on the charts, you know, Dark Side of the Moon, still, you know, Monster. I mean, monster year. We talked about several of these records. You know, we have episodes for, Dark
Side of the Moon by Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, amazing. And noticed that there was a lot of double albums in that list as well.
That was the time of the year. That was the thing.
Maybe that could be perhaps the reason too. Maybe that's, you know, I don't know. But this album, so decidedly, I wouldn't say it. I would not call this a lightweight album by any means. No. And compared, you know, to the musically, I think it's just as rich and deserving of the accolade that it got. I mean, it was in very good company though.
Yeah.
So, but
again, you know, considering he's pretty much doing everything by himself also.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So again, he's a self-contained unit.
Genius.
Yeah. Genius is, you know, that's an easy one to put on to him without any pushback, right, Chris? I mean, it's kind of, he was born in 1950. By the early 60s, he was a recording artist.
Yeah, I mean,
on Motown, and he was having hits. So he's been in the business since he was a kid.
And it's a couple things about that. Like the thing that always amazed me is like just his musicality and his ability. I don't know how as a blind man you play the drums. Like I could see the piano, but like I guess if you know where everything is, but I just was always fascinated. Like not only that he played the drums, but he played them so well with a disability that doesn't allow to see where you're moving your hand. It always blew me away. But he's an amazing songwriter. I mean, it's not even just his ability to play; it's his ability to write songs that like are just so powerful, like both lyrically and musically. And to your point about him doing it all on his own, this is a great book. I actually went back and I read the section about when he did it. It's called I'm holding it up. I don't know why it's coming upside. Oh no, never a dull. It's reversed. Never a dull moment. It's about the year 1971, and that was the year he turned 21. And he was able to he got a chunk of money from Motown. He had his contract renegotiated, and they said one of the things he really tried to do as he starts to enter that golden period with Music of My Mind and Talking Book and this one and all those records is that he wanted to break away from being told by Berry Gordy, this is what you're going to record, this is who you're going to play with, and these are all the things that I expect you to do. And he really kind of bucked against that, and he ends up hooking up with the two guys that helped him produce this record. What were their names again, Dean?
Malcolm Cecil, who plays bass. It was the bass player, and Robert Margouleff.
Right, and they're responsible for this synthesizer that he was using called the Tonto. Basically what it is, it took all of the different synthesizers of the day, the ARP, the Moog, the Oberheim, and they patched it all together. If you can find a picture of it online, it looks like what the ENIAC, the first computer, looked like. It just takes up an entire room, and he sat at this keyboard, and basically these guys helped him program it. If he said, these are the sounds I want, they would put it together for him. And he used that to be able to record and play on his own because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be the master of his own destiny after being under the thumb of Berry Gordy for all those years when he was a kid. Yeah, so it's Eric, really fascinating.
Before I kick it over to you, Eric, I want to go back and say that Stevie Wonder is a funky drummer.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean, he like if you listen to Superstition, his drum work on that and his drum work on this, I mean, he really kind of knows what he wants and is able to accomplish it, right, Eric? I mean, it's kind of
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I had no idea that he was such a talented drummer. I knew he did. I knew he played, but not like this. You would think like these early records, they had jazz infused drummers come in and play, but it's him. That's amazing. He's up there with the best of them.
Yeah,
I think.
And just like his contemporaries, Brian Wilson, same thing. Under the thumb of like a recording contract or produce a label, and wanting to break out and do your own thing, right? And good thing about his career is he spent a lot of his younger years doing that, toiling under the Motown label and putting out the stuff that was it was very much of the 60s, signed, sealed, delivered, and all that stuff, and popular. But then, you could say 10 years into his career, most people's career is over. 10 years into his career, he's like 23, 21, 22, 23, ready to break out and tell Berry Gordy, yeah, listen, I don't want any restraints on anything I do. And we had seen that 2 years previous with Marvin Gaye, right, Eric, with What's Going On. Marvin Gaye had kind of done the same thing. He was in the Motown Tamla factory of that era, and then kind of wanted to do stuff that was more socially conscious and just more hit closer to home.
And interestingly, they both kind of were in that zone. Like 71 is when he turned 21, and that's where you start to see these string of records. Starts with Music of My Mind, and that's the same. Marvin Gaye went about it differently, but they both were looking to like not be on, and to the point where I think Stevie Wonder tried to leave Motown at one point. He threatened to leave, and that Berry Gordy saw it as disloyal.
Yeah. So Eric, I think we see these artists just kind of pay their dues to the label, right? And then they're kind of like, well, now it's my turn.
That's right. And, you gain a lot of knowledge. You gain a lot of playing with the best of the best. I guess Motown had their fair share of a wrecking crew, if you will. I mean, talented musicians that have played on like all these R&B records of the time, and learning from the masters and just getting out there and having something to say, both lyrically, musically. And just really, sophisticated music. This isn't just, some, light fluff sort of pop stuff. We're talking about really integrated, almost jazzy kind of, really complicated stuff here, I think, on some of the stuff. I mean, there are songs that are just, I would say free form and more, there's like sort of jazz ballads like on this record. And
like the opening cut, Too High.
I love Visions, the second track.
Yeah.
You think about that song. It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and just the flow of it, and but yet it's not what he would be what he had done in the 60s. He wrote like those sort of love pop songs then, but this was something a definite step up in terms of its sophistication.
Yeah, more mature, right? And in its arrangements also, right? Yeah. So these he's experimenting with new technology with the synthesizers, really embracing it. Talking Book, the album previous to this, was really kind of the start of that. And then also like you, Eric, you said, there are love songs, but they're coming from. It's hard to think that he's only 23 because they even seem a little bit more mature than that. But he's been in the business so long, like that his growth, the arc that he's on is so much more accelerated, right? He's so, he's been in the business, so he knows how it works. He knows how to, knew how to use his leverage,
right,
to construct a contract where he could be free. And then literally the name of the album, Innervisions, like these are the things that are on his mind, and it's political, it's spiritual, it's romantic. Like there's a lot of different things to chew on here.
Consider the titles of all of these records, starting with Music of My Mind, Talking Book. This is him coming out. This is him. I got all this inside. Innervisions is a brilliant title for what's on this record. Fulfillingness, First Finale. That could be. And then of course Songs in the Key of Life, which is grand opus. But yeah, I mean, we're right from the get-go. The title of the albums are so apropos, and they work and fit the music. You know, typically they're album titles that don't make any kind of sense, right? You know, here that, you know, this is not the case. This is something that, you know, it reminds me of Coltrane, and Coltrane in his most experimental, like in the 60s when he was, you know, getting out there and getting spiritual and doing this wild stuff, and just, and the and the album titles of that time also reflected the, you know, the mood and the spirit of what he was doing. And it's the exact same thing here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think because he's taking control. I think, in the 60s, it was like Stevie Wonder swings or does what, like, you know, kind of, or they would have a, you know, the album would be like one of the hits, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And like you said, even down to like the album title selection is very deliberate.
Yeah.
And very much, I'm in control of this, and here's the messages I want to deliver, and here's where I'm at. So, and with Innervisions, it's got some maybe it's me, but in 70, this sounds ahead of its time for 73, even with just the production is so nice and clean. Like, I really love how
really nice,
like this almost has an 80s smoothness to it that you wouldn't see until later on in the decade, where he really kind of had this well arranged, and like I said, like Visions and Too High, the way the album opens, it's very jazzy and very free flowing, but also jazzy in a way that it's really pleasurable, like pleasing to the ear. I put it on, I'm like, wow, this just kind of opens up, and like I'm feeling relaxed. I'm ready to take the journey.
Yeah, this was using the tools of the day, especially when you talk about synthesizers, and how, if they're used right and correctly, you know, he's doing it right here, because it doesn't, you know, there are songs where it doesn't sound artificial. It doesn't sound sort of, you know, mechanical. I mean, it's very organic sounding. And it's amazing how he was able to cobble all of those together and get that right tone. Yeah, Chris, you had.
I was going to say it's also that he's not relying solely on it. Like, everybody kind of focuses. I think I called it tomo before, but it's called the tanto. He's using the tanto, but at this point, he's knowing when to use it, and he's picking spots. Like, to me, some of my favorite songs on the record are the ones where either it's not as prevalent that you hear it, or it's not on there at all. Like, it's like he's knowing to not overuse it. Just, this is another, you know, paint, you know, color on his paint palette. Like, it's just something he's using, not the only thing he's relying on at this point.
It's a tool.
And it's very impactful, because you know, the first two songs are almost kind of together, like Too High and Visions are very kind of similar. And then when Living for the City starts, that's like him picking his spot, because you hear like this doom, 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 doom. Like, it's a totally different tone. It's a totally different feel. And you're kind of ready for it. Like, he kind of lulls you into, okay, this is kind of mellow, but then he springs Living for the City, which is kind of like the centerpiece of the album, even though it's the third song, because it's the longest song, and it's kind of epic in its scope. The radio version that you hear is very short. And this has a whole other piece.
It does not come close to the album version.
With this kind of interlude of a story. And then there's a whole other verse section at the end. And and this is where he's, you know, his inner visions kind of come to life, where Too High is literally about drugs, you know, Visions and Living for the City is about what was going on racially at the time. But he doesn't stay on one thing. He kind of then moves off of that, you know, to a romantic song, and then Higher Ground, which is kind of about, you know, reincarnation and spirituality. So he really kind of moves through on this album. He kind of moves through each one of these modes brilliantly, especially with Living for the City. It's just like the way Visions ends and the way Living for the City kind of it's like percolates, like the way the song starts, you know, and then it picks up, and you're totally in another world with that song. It's one of my favorite songs by him, just lyrically.
And it's decidedly all optimistic too. You never hear a downbeat Stevie Wonder song.
Yeah,
you know, even when he's talking about these, you know, these heavy social issues, but it's decidedly beautiful. You know, he's getting the message across, but you could do it in a way that is not, you know, you're not depressed. You know what I mean? Like, he has that knack of just making it and just taking something and making something positive out of it. And
there's definitely a sense of pride there, especially with living in the city. There's a particular lyric that I always key in on when he's talking about the character's sister, and he says her clothes are old, but never are they dirty. So there's that pride there's that pride thing, right? It's like, we may have older clothes, but they're going to be clean, and we're gonna carry ourselves a certain way. And that lyric always kind of hits me, and just the way he's singing it too, because he's singing very differently from the first two songs. So you're getting that kind of superstition, Stevie Wonder,
aggressive voice.
But like you said, kind of like this is positive about there's struggles and there's strife, but there's also a sense of dignity and positivity within it that you hold your head up, even though the end of the song gets, the guy gets thrown in jail and he gets railroaded, it's a little tough, but it's also very realistic, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, to your point with that line, I was chuckling when you said it, because when I texted my old man and said I'm going on to do Innervisions, he just replied with that line. That's how he replied. So, and then 2 minutes later, he's like, that's an amazing song. But you know, to Eric's point about trying to stay positive or to like get your point across, but like still making it beautiful. Yeah. Like Mr. Know-It-All, like hit me particularly hard. I guess as a history teacher, knowing what's going on in politics right now, those lyrics. But what I like about it is that it's supposed to be about Nixon, but it's not tied to Nixon, so it like still makes the record relevant now. And if regardless of what side you're on, of side of the aisle you're on politically, I think people feel that way about most politicians in general. Sure. And he's not putting it across in like a Fortunate Son or American Idiot kind of way where it's really super aggressive or angry. Right. He's just being very matter of fact, and it's this very beautiful song with this incredible bass line. Like it's such a well crafted song, and it's not the type of song you would hear tied to somebody trying to make a message about the state of politics in the country in 1973. So I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and he makes it universal, right? By not couching it one way or the other. Because then on his next album, he had another song called "You Haven't Done Nothing," which was another swipe at the administration. Kind of like So he's not afraid to do it, but he makes it so it's very listenable. It's not like he just kind of the way he slides it in, and even with Higher Ground, I'll be honest, Eric, I don't remember Higher Ground when I was young. Like, to me, my introduction to Higher Ground was Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Mine too.
Like, and I should, and this song hit number 4, and it must have been on the radio, but I just don't remember that as much as like Red Hot Chili Peppers taking it and just making it their own.
Yeah. No, it was always one of my favorite songs by Stevie Wonder, and I just never knew what album it was from at the time when I was younger. Because you're trying to look for this stuff, and you think, oh, was it on songs? You want it to be on Songs in the Key of Life, being that's everybody talks about that record as being his most popular, and you would think that all of those great songs came from that, but that's not the case, because I think all of these albums are great.
Can I tell you?
Yeah,
I was gonna say, just to your point, I think Songs in the Key of Life is a great record, but like to me, this one is more powerful because I played Songs in the Key of Life yesterday, like throughout the entire day. It's a great record, but it's almost too long. It's almost too much to digest. What I think is good about this record, it's a perfectly sequenced record as far as the songs, and it's only 45 minutes. And you get in, you get out. Like Songs in the Key of Life, I was actually starting to get a little tired by the time I got to the end of it.
It's New World Record, right? It's that perfect length of it says what it needs to say. Songs in the Key of Life have songs that are very, very similar. As most of the double albums of the time would just sort of be a little bit repetitive and a little, but still great stuff. I mean, all the way
amazing,
through. Yeah. This whole period was just amazing.
And
amazing.
Just to tie up the Higher Ground thing, after the album came out, Stevie Wonder had a severe car accident. The person he was driving with, they hit a car, like a logging truck, and the The log went through, hit him in the head. He was in a coma for a few days. He lost his sense of smell and taste for a little bit, but he was very afraid that he was not going to be able to play again. He was very afraid that the accident took something away from him. And it's interesting because Higher Ground talks about, keep on trying to reach the higher ground, about reincarnation. Mm-hmm. And he said, I didn't realize it at the time, but it wasn't until after the accident that it really became much more spiritual and things that, happen or don't happen for a reason. And eventually, I think when he was in the hospital, his friend brought a keyboard in, and he kind of looked at it for a little bit, and then eventually he went to it, and it was there. It didn't leave him, but it kind of, that accident kind of really kind of brought more of that spirituality to the forefront.
Yeah.
And when he was in that coma, his friend, to try and snap him out of it, actually walked up to his ear, and the doctor said, say what talk to him, sing to him, and it can only help, it can't hurt. And his friend started screaming Higher Ground into his ear. And that's when he started to respond. He actually responded to somebody singing Higher Ground to him.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
That's an amazing story. And, I just think I would argue, I mean, well, argue, but,
no arguments here.
Could it be that he just got even more creative as a result? So you would think like he said, the big fear is that you're going to lose something there, something of your faculties, which he's already he's already struggling. I mean, he's already challenged there, and yet he's and it's
and he excels, but
absolutely.
That's why I could probably understand the fear that, well, I've had other things taken from me. Now what? And I've been able to, to excel at what I do despite that, right? And not have it be a barrier. I've never heard him complain or kind of any pity or sympathy. No. He's always just been Stevie Wonder, and he's always just kind of done what he's done. So I could understand after having an accident like that, getting hit in the head with a log, and he's kind of like,
as far as I know, one of the least controversial figures in music. Yeah. I mean, he's one of the most beautiful souls in music, I think.
Yeah.
Always just all around, just great, beautiful person.
Peace and love and the brotherhood of man and women. Mm-hmm. He's very much into that, into the spiritual side. Very much like a George Harrison, but without the affairs. Although he has affairs too, but very much in the same vein, right? That same kind of like search for spirituality and how it translates into his music and into what he's feeling, right? It was very much the same type of thing. But again, he was also making statements that, Dark Side of the Moon isn't going to make, right? That, those out, that kind of an album is very impactful, but in a different way, and this is more along the lines of those personal statements. So it's almost the antithesis to taking a trip with Dark Side of the Moon, and Innervisions is more taking an inner trip, but through someone's psyche and what they're feeling and how they're, what their worldview is on things, and you get that through each one. I gotta say, I gotta admit, every time I listen to Don't You Worry About a Thing, it makes me want to watch Silver Linings Playbook. Because it's not like it's part like that dance, like that's like the I think they play the most of that song in that whole dance medley that they do. Yeah. And it's so perfectly placed in that movie that when I hear it, I immediately go to that dance floor scene when they're, when they're all like waiting for the score, why are they so excited about a 5?
Yeah.
It's just one of those ones. But again, this is Stevie Wonder, fooling around with some Latin inspired stuff too. So he's not afraid to kind of go, but it all fits, right, Chris? I mean, it kind of, there's so many different things, but it is like kind of going through somebody's mind of the different things they think about.
No, it's true. And like, I think what really makes it work, and I keep coming back to this, is like, it's just, to me, sequence does play a factor in how this is just a perfectly sequence record and how the tracks play out. Like you said, like Higher Ground going into Visions, and just like there's a flow that makes everything not that it's one piece of music or a concept record, but everything just kind of melds together perfectly because of the way it's all laid out on the record as a document.
Yeah. Yeah. And the song, I think there's another lyric that I picked up on. I think it's in Jesus, Children of America. And it's, I might be misquoting it, but basically it's like, when you pray, do you mean it? You know, and it's kind of statement about religion. It's like everyone, you know, says how religious they are, but he's actually, you know, when you're sitting down to pray, are you just doing it because everybody else is, or is it something that's actually meaningful to you? So again, there's these, besides the great musicianship, there's a lot of lyrical content to kind of pour over and think about that you give, you know, there's so much to chew on in this album of ballads.
I love that kind of thought process. You know, you mentioned the word pragmatic. I love the fact that somebody can throw something like that out there and not be preachy about it and not say, oh, you should be doing this, or, you know, let's all whatever. And he's not really doing that. You know, he's singing about love and he's singing about, but this is something that he's feeling, but it's not necessarily saying that you should do, you know, this or that. But, you know, make that point, say, look, you know, do you really mean it? Do you want to just, it's very matter of fact. And it's very, you know, it does make you think. And I think that's the brilliance of some of these great songwriters that have that knack to do that. They can make you think without, I'm not trying to impress anything on somebody. Cause if you ask them, they'll probably tell you that. They're trying to avoid those kinds of discussions, I'm sure, but you know, Dylan, I'm sure would probably been, you know, like people have been asking him for years, like, oh, you know, what does that mean? What is that? What is that? He's like, I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just throwing lyrics out there, you know?
Or John Lennon, same thing. It's like, I took a crap
exactly.
morning and I wrote a song about it. It's not anything special.
Right. You know, this is something a little bit different,
like
of course.
Though, right? This almost seems like a diary.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point. That's a good
his thoughts of kind of just on these different subjects, right? And they're like you said, they're not preachy, because if you write stuff in a diary or you write stuff to yourself, you don't preach to yourself. You just write down thoughts.
Right.
You just kind of write things down. You don't preach to yourself because you already know how you feel. So it's like you said, Eric, it's kind of more kind of a little matter of factly of, here's some stuff to chew on. Here's some thoughts. You know, I'm just going to kind of put them out there, and you do with them what you want.
Yeah, I think the hope is that it reaches someone who will say, you know, I relate. Yeah, I don't not necessarily agree, disagree thing, but I could feel that. I feel you, you know, like that. That's, you know, and that's great. And that's what, I guess that's what any artist would want, is to reach people and to get out there and just touch them in their own lives. And so that's I guess that's the hope. But
I think I think the word that comes to mind after kind of talking all this out is, this album is very thought provoking.
Yes.
Right. And you wouldn't think it, because of, again, how stuff is it's ballady, it's jazzy, but like I said, within there, the statements that he's making is, you said it perfect, Eric. It's not preachy, but he's giving you stuff to think about and say, well, here's just a thought I had. You know, when you pray, do you really mean it? I'm not telling you that you're bad if you do or you don't, but here's what I thought about it. Here's a thought I had, because when I caught that lyric today or yesterday, I'm like, holy shit. You know, like, it's like kind of like, you know, it just kind of hit me. I'm like, I was driving when I was listening to it, and I really wasn't ready to, like, I wasn't looking at the lyrics. So when it came, I just kind of heard it, you know? So I think what this album does, and also the way, you know, what's going on also, right? Again, a very personal album, maybe a little bit more preachy, or maybe just a little bit more socially conscious of the times, but very much the same thing. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happening in my world. Here's my worldview. Have at it, you know, listen or don't.
I don't necessarily think it's more socially conscious. I just think I think Marvin Gaye's focus was only that, whereas this is socially conscious, but also being very reflective on other subjects, which I think might even make it more relatable than just somebody feeling like this guy's just talking about politics the whole way through. And when there's when you think about things that struck you, Dean, when you're talking about that lyric, the other thing, when I was in my classroom this morning getting ready to teach, I don't have Spotify on my school computer, so I was listening to it on YouTube, and somebody had a comment under Visions, and like the comment was relating to the fact that he's talking about visions and seeing things in his mind, and the idea that that's coming from somebody who doesn't have sight.
Yeah.
Like even just that in and of itself is something like you're like, whoa, shit, I didn't even really think about that.
He mentions that a lot. He talks about the sky being blue.
Yeah.
He talks about the I think it's in Visions, about the autumn leaves, that they're brown or the leaves are green, but then when autumn comes, they turn brown. And it's very like, not to belabor it, but you would not know that this is a person that is challenged by not having vision or not having sight, but can perfectly illustrate lyrically things that we take for granted, right? And then you're thinking like, wow, this guy can't see, but he's talking about these. He's talking about the blue skies and colors actually in Too High. He's talking about reds and greens and she's tangerine and all these other things that are very insightful, again, for, that we may take for granted. But then if you see where he's coming from, it's like, yeah, that's even more like higher marks for him.
Well, kind of like Brian Wilson, him being a little bit deaf.
Yeah.
And yet he creates these perfect harmonies. How does that work? It's like he hears it in his head. It's in there. You know the language, it's amazing. Just amazing just how the human mind could work in that fashion. So
yeah. And then there's a little bit of wordplay too. I noticed that there's two the opening track on side 1 is Too High. The opening track on side 2 is Higher Ground.
Yeah.
Also, both songs use the word high, but they're used in different terms. The first one is about drugs, right? About a woman who's getting too high and she overdoses. And then the second one, reference to high, is spirituality. And again, so he's using words and making points, but also a little wordplay in there as well, kind of, getting you to think about these things a little bit deeper. And that, when I looked at that, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's just mind blown 2.0, on this album, like another thing that he's doing that just kind of, I don't know if he's sliding it in or if I'm reading too much into it, but it's, for me, it's kind of it's all right there. It's kind of this is just an amazing set of songs. It's like Chris said, sequenced greatly and performed like to perfection. I mean, I don't think there's any nitpicks.
No.
What is it about this period in the the 70s? What is it about this time that just is so inspiring? Even now, it's so inspiring.
I think I think we might have talked about it, Eric. When we did an episode, Greatest Decade for Music.
Yeah.
Oh, 70s for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's what I said. I think what it is this, the early, rock and roll came to what we know in the late 50s, right? And then it kind of went dormant for a little while until the arrival of the Beatles. So I think the 60s was that growing period of again, we saw all that weird innovation. We saw all these different groups mimicking the Beatles and then other offshoots. And by the time you got through that and you got through the hippie and the psychedelic, it was kind of like, here's everything we've learned. Yeah. Now let's put it to use. Like the 60s were like the growing pains of rock and roll. It was subversive. It was this, it was that. And then all of a sudden it became like, okay, it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. It's an art form. And by that time, you had the splits, you had, what would Led Zeppelin do, and what all the Southern rock, you had Allman Brothers, you had all these genres springing up seemingly at the same time, because everybody felt free enough to be like, well, here's my spin on what I was hearing in the 60s, but since I'm from the South, it's going to have a little bit more of a country feel to it, because that's what I'm bringing to it, right? And Zeppelin brought something else to what they were doing, so I think to your question is this was like a time of like immense creativity, right?
I think you hit it on the head when you say the word free. That's what comes to mind for me is freedom, because like you said, I mean, we weren't really. I mean, there was charting, of course, their hit singles, but people weren't really making albums necessarily to be hits. They're just doing what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's, unfortunate, but it's not really the case anymore.
No, very different.
Yeah.
And the other thing is bands had room to be experimental and find themselves too. Cause back then the one I think about is Yes. Like Yes put out 3 records and they didn't hit until the 3rd record, which was the Yes album. And there's a lot of bands in the 70s that are like that. Those first 2 records weren't really hits out of the gate, but they had like 3 or 4 records to find their audience. So they were allowed to be experimental and play around. Queen's another example of that. They don't hit really until Sheer Heart Attack.
Look at Genesis from 1973, selling England by the pound. They didn't have any, like, nowadays a label would not stay with this with Genesis.
No way.
Going through all, like, as they figure things out and kind of work it out. It's like nowadays is labels want all this stuff worked out. We don't have time for you to fiddle around for 5 albums before you get somewhere with it, right? So to Eric's point, there was that freedom / tolerance from the labels. Like they would sign almost anybody and you would get like a 5 album deal, and you can kind of do what you want, and you'd either get dropped or you'd kind of get that lightning in a bottle, kind of like Steve Miller did, right? When we did Book of Dreams.
I'd like to think Steve Miller, it took a long time too. He really didn't hit till the Joker. That was a good 5 years into his career.
That's what I'm saying. He was kind of plodding along. Then all of a sudden he started like hitting. He started understanding what his formula was, and then was able to replicate it and go further.
But I think that the people in charge of all this, like the producers, a lot of them were into music. Right. They weren't just businessmen. They were music. A lot of them were musicians themselves, producers, arrangers, that kind of thing. So they wanted these people to do more. They wanted to, go for it. Just, do what they recognized talent, but they thought that I think they thought that you could do better. You could actually improve on your talent and do something different. And I want to hear that,
Yeah.
And
it was a more artistic time. It was
right.
Seen less as a commodity and more as an art form.
Yeah.
Like I said, like Zeppelin had no hits. They were getting kind of popular on the radio, but same thing, right? No discernible hits. Pink Floyd, no discernible hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just all album. Pink Floyd didn't really have a hit until The Wall. Let's be honest, like a certified like hit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Everything else was kind of popular, album stuff, but even not everything from them. So it's, it was just a different time of labels, letting these artists kind of figure out what they're doing. And now it's more about, it was obviously about dollars and cents back then, but now it's even more like, okay, we need something right away, that we can market. We're not going to waste time on it. So
you need to have an audience quick. They need to love you and, right out the gate. Otherwise you're done. That's the sad truth of it. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. But, and the whole business is, people are self-producing now, which is a lot more freedom in a different way than artists had back then. Back then you couldn't self-produce or promote. Now you can do this stuff in your living room or in a side room. And, if it catches on somewhere, you can kind of make your own luck. So things are different. And some in some ways they're better, but back then, as far as a business goes, it was a lot more freer from a corporate standpoint. They'd give you a 5 album. Look at Styx, another one. They're just plodding along, plopping out these prog albums, until they hit with Lady, and then they wouldn't hit again until much later. So, but this, Stevie Wonder was just out of the gate from when he started. It's just like. This is a problem that Stevie Wonder didn't have. like he did have a little bit of a lull when his as he got into his late teens, his voice started to change, and Motown didn't know what to do with him, and they were kind of thinking about dropping him. They're like, well, he's it's kind of like that Peter Brady thing,
Yeah, he wasn't little Stevie Wonder anymore.
That transition period. They're like, well, I think he's kind of run his course, and I forgot who it was, but someone convinced Barry Gordy, don't give up on this kid.
Yeah.
There's too much there, and thank goodness it didn't. But
and listen to his vocals. You talk about his musicianship and all that other stuff, and the writing, vocally, that was the thing. Towards because I just kept listening to this record over and over again this week, and that was one of the things that really stood out to me is just vocally. People don't talk enough about what an amazing vocalist he is, and the way he delivers these things, and he has all these tools as a singer, but he doesn't over sing either, which some people tend to do sometimes. It's just so perfect and so crisp and just so beautiful to his voice.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost when you talk about Stevie Wonder as a musician.
Yeah, and on this album, he shows you that he does. With Living for the City, it's more of an impassioned vocal. With Don't You Worry About a Thing, it's a little more jazzy. But then he could do all the ballady stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely right that his vocals are just. We've spent a lot of time, kind of really celebrating what a great musician is. But yeah, vocally as well, he can match all of that. So he brings the whole package. All right, I think this is a good time to do 3 Lies and a Truth. What do you think?
I'm down.
You got no choice. We're doing it anyway. So
Chris is like,
no matter what your answer was. So if it's the first time listening, this is a relatively new segment. Although Chris,
that collective sigh was like,
no, I'm ready. I'm ready to go for this one.
All right. So if you're new to the show, this is a relatively new segment. I'm going to read off 4 statements. 3 of them are lies. 1 of them is true. These gentlemen, their task is to sort through the bullshit. And find that one nugget of truth that's in here. So I'm going to read the 4 statements. We're going to have Eric go first, and playing at home, let us know how you do as well. So here we go. Here come the 4 statements. Statement number 1: along with Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Taylor Swift, and Frank Sinatra, they are the only artists to have won 3 consecutive Album of the Year Grammys. I'll read that one again. It's a long sentence. Along with Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Taylor Swift, and Frank Sinatra are the only artists to have won 3 consecutive Album of the Year Grammys. Statement number 2. Stevie Wonder released an instrumental album in 1968 under the name Ivets Red Now, with no vocals. Statement number 3. Stevie Wonder was the 2nd youngest solo artist behind Justin Bieber to top the charts. Have number 1. Final statement. In 1991, Stevie Wonder won an Academy Award for his soundtrack work on Jungle Fever. Okay. I'll go through them one more time. Along with Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Taylor Swift, and Frank Sinatra are the only artists to have won 3 consecutive Album of the Year Grammys. Number 2, Stevie Wonder released an instrumental album in 1968 under the name Ivets Red Now, which is Stevie Wonder backwards. Number 3, Stevie Wonder was the 2nd youngest solo artist behind Justin Bieber to have a number 1 hit. Final statement. In 1991, Stevie Wonder won an Academy Award for his soundtrack work on the film Jungle Fever by Spike Lee. 3 of those are false. 1 of those is a nugget of truth in there.
Oh my God, this is tough.
This is really hard. These all sound plausible.
Yeah.
This note's for you.
I'm kind of beating myself up here because I usually, when people do soundtracks, I'm usually up on that, but I don't know if that statement is true.
Okay. These are Eric's Innervisions that we're getting.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. You know what? I think I'm going to go with I really don't know. I'm kind of stumped.
Sure.
But just for shits and giggles, I'm just going to go for number 2.
Number 2.
Because it's just an odd
instrumental album in 1968 under the name Ivets Red Now, which is Stevie Wonder spelled backwards. You're thinking that's true.
I'm thinking that's true. I don't know.
Alrighty.
I don't know.
Chris, do you need them read again, or you got it?
I got it. I got it narrowed down to the last 2, Jungle Fever and the Justin Bieber one. But I think I'm going to say shit. I'm going to go with the one about Justin Bieber, about him being second.
So Stevie Wonder was the 2nd youngest solo artist behind Justin Bieber to have a number one hit single.
Yep.
Is what you're saying. And then Eric said Stevie released an instrumental album in 1968 under the name Ivets Red Now, which is Stevie Wonder spelled backwards. Okay. The first lie. Stevie Wonder did win an Academy Award, but he won it for The Woman in Red, not for his soundtrack work on Jungle Fever. He won it for I Just Called to Say I Love You. Won an Academy Award for that.
Okay.
So he did win one. The next lie. Along with Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Taylor Swift, and Frank Sinatra are the only artists to have won 3 consecutive Album of the Year Grammys. That's false. Stevie Wonder is the only artist to ever win 3 consecutive Album of the Year Grammys. That's an incredible statistic on its own. This Innervisions was the first one. It started here and then went, and it ended with Songs in the Key of Life. So pretty amazing. Again, this in the 70s, and before this was Talking Book, go figure. Okay, so we've got two statements left. Stevie released an instrumental album in 1968 under the name Ivets Red Now, and Stevie Wonder was the second youngest solo artist behind Justin Bieber to top the charts in 1963. He topped it with Fingertips was his number one. He was. What do we want? The truth or the lie?
You decide.
Your call.
Yeah. My call. Let's go with the lie first. Stevie Wonder was not the second youngest solo artist to release a number one song. He was the youngest solo artist at 13.
I was trying to figure out how old Justin Bieber was. That was
no one has had a number one single younger than him. Eric, it's true. He released an instrumental album in 1968 under the name Ivets Red Now. Stevie Wonder backwards.
Wow.
And it's just all instrumentals. It's just jazz instrumental stuff that he did.
That's a total guess, but wow.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I was when you said when you said you didn't know and you were going to guess, I fucking knew that's the one you were going to pick. I knew you were going to pick that one for some reason. I'm like, this SOB is going to pick he's going to get it.
Well, you kind of said in the beginning when you said that, the truth is just as amazing as the lies. So that was a little bit of a tell right there too. So for me, I might have been thinking of that subconsciously when I don't know, but
so those are some.
I wouldn't put it. I'm really not surprised by it. I mean,
not at all.
But yeah,
he was only 18. Yeah. So at home, how did you do? Let us know on social media. Hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. And thanks for playing. Eric's got I think he's pretty close to 50%. He's kind of he gets them, then he'll miss a couple, then he'll get a bunch in a row. Chris, I don't have your stats. Have you been keeping score?
I think I've slightly more wrong than I have right.
Okay. All right. That's what I like to hear. That means I'm doing my job good. Do we need to do favorite tracks on this or what? I mean, this is just kind of is it a fool's errand to even talk about favorite tracks on this or what, Chris?
I mean, like I know there's like the obvious ones like Living for the City and Higher Ground. Like I think everybody knows those even if you've never heard the record. Mm-hmm. I think Visions is an amazing song. I love All in Love is Fair and Mr. Know-It-All. Like to me, what I found surprising listening to this record, I'm usually the guy that's like listening to like, the louder, the faster, the heavier, like, the more bombastic. That's usually like my wheelhouse. This record, I was struck more by the ballads. I was struck more by like the softer side of the record. So that's why I'm saying like Visions, All in Love is Fair, and Mr. Know-It-All. Outside of the obvious singles, those are the 3 or 4 that I really think are the most powerful.
Yeah, very very reflective songs as well, right? The slower ones. Eric, what do you got?
I like the first 3 tracks. Yeah. Probably my favorite. The way this album starts. I mean, every song is good, but I think for me those are the strongest. I love like Chris, I love Visions. I think that's it's a beautiful, beautiful song.
And that acoustic bass line, it's just so perfect.
Man. Yeah. I have to go with Living for the City. It's just such a powerful song. Outside of that, Golden Lady, I really like it. It kind of, a lot of the songs on the first side kind of roll into it. They kind of almost roll into each other too. They almost kind of, you don't get a lot of gap in between. So kind of, it gives you that kind of, the way thoughts flow where you go from one thing to another. And Jesus, Children of America, I kind of like it. It's kind of a, again, it's kind of a, you're getting kind of 2 spiritual songs in a row, which is kind of interesting that you didn't spread it out. But like I said, the lyrical content on that I found that just very compelling. So, Did you have something, Chris?
Golden Lady reminds me of What's Going On.
A little bit.
It has that vibe, like the bass line and the rhythm and the cadence just struck me to be like that song.
Yeah. Golden Lady, lead vocal, piano, Fender Rhodes, drums. Now you say Moog. Eric, do we say Moog?
I think it. I used to think it was Moog, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Moog.
I had a choir teacher in high school who was a prog rock musician who actually met the guy who made the keyboard, and he made sure that we all pronounced it Moog.
Doesn't mean he was right. Doesn't mean he was right.
We met the guy.
The Moog bass and the Tonto synthesizer. So again, Stevie Wonder is which is what Eric and I love. We love self-contained artists that do everything, that can do everything, that, this way they don't have to fight, that usually when you're with a band, you gotta, I want it, if you can play everything,
why not?
Then you do it and you don't have to compromise your vision. And, for better or for worse, that cuts both ways, that statement. If you don't have somebody there, you could be too indulgent, but if you know what you want, like a la this album, a la Pet Sounds, when you've got a vision and you know what it is, and you just need to execute it, that's what this album is, and he's able to do everything, with pretty much, on his own. You get something as beautiful as this as well, too. That's the thing, is just the sound of this album is just something different than the other albums that I mentioned from 73. This just stands apart, and maybe that's why it won, and maybe that's why he would win 2 subsequent Album of the Year awards too, because he was just kind of hitting something that was, like you said, it was of its time and timely, and the lyrics were timely, but like Eric said, not preachy, but delivering it to you.
It delivered, and it flowed. It just flowed. It just came out.
And the hooks, he's got, he's got the hooks also, because, after this was fulfilling this his first finale. And that's got, a Boogie on Reggae Woman, and You Haven't Done Nothing. He was this was like his zone from like 73 to 76.
I think they call it his golden period.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it was kind of like his, they call like the 60s, like his teen period. Then this was like his golden era. And then the 80s, what they call his pop era, where he was just writing pop songs. Like I Just Called to Say I Love You. And Ebony and Ivory, but McCartney wrote that, but still,
it's weird to think that the guy who wrote that did this. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't know.
And he was only in his 40s. He was still young in the 80s. Like, the guy is eternally youthful because he's been in the business since he was a kid. So you usually think, people that were around in the 60s, they got to be old now. Well, he was a child when he was doing it. So he was ahead of the curve and was able to hit his stride at the right time as he grew into maturity and grew into his own person, and then was perfectly placed in the 70s to just kind of put out these statements that were timely and people were ready for. So it's just an amazing thing. Go ahead and check this out. It's on all the streaming services. So, this was a gushing episode and justifiably so.
Yeah.
It's really great.
For sure.
It's a great album. So
perfect.
I was torn. When I was looking, I'm like, God, which one? It probably wasn't going to be Songs in the Key of Life because it was a double album, which can get a little long in the tooth, but,
Talking Book is amazing too. Talking Book is like
another one. I'm like, I used to listen to that when I was a kid in the library.
Yeah,
and I remember it because it had the braille on the inside. It had braille on the inside of the. It was a gatefold jacket, and it had braille on the inside. And I remember I would listen to. I never listened to Superstition. I didn't even know about the song. Yeah. I used to listen to "You Are the Sunshine of My Life" over and over. That was the only. I just used to put that on in the library. Just listen to that song over and over because I just loved it. And oddly enough, just a side thing before we go, one of the first cassettes I ever got, not that I bought with my own money, but my parents, was a Stevie Wonder cassette. It was like his greatest hits from like the 60s. It had like fingertips on it. It had all this other stuff. It was pink. It was a pink cassette tape.
Yeah.
And you got like Masters or Caldors or one of those defunct department stores, like one of those compilation those compilation tapes that,
Good Lord, that's a blast from the past. Caldor.
Those compilation tapes that they used to have like in their bin.
Right.
It was like one of those Stevie Wonder compilations. It was one of the first tapes I had. So oddly enough, I go way back with Stevie. So anyway, let us know what you thought about Innervisions, hit or miss. If you're saying it's a miss, this might not be the podcast for you. Anyway,
wow.
Go play your Moog synthesizer,
and I'll play my Moog.
There you go.
So, Christopher Clark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Thanks for gushing. We're not the only two gushers here. People we got some really great people on this thing. So we love hearing your thoughts.
We love having you on.
Your expressions. So
it's always great. It's always great having you. And of course, we'll have you on for more episodes. And as always, Eric will be on that comfy couch, and I'll be on this hard green IKEA chair. So for Chris, for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.